This is the Real Footy Podcast. Thanks for joining us to tip round 10. My name's Andrew Wu and I'm joined as usual by Peter Ryan. How are you, Pete?
You don't sound very enthusiastic to see me. You right there, mate? Or yeah, no, I'm great. I've stuck at the lead. I had a really poor start to the tipping last week and fought back to remain level with Michael Gleeson, who's keeping me on my toes. And I don't want to talk about it, but I think we've kicked two clear of poor old Jimmy Bartell and Jake Knoll.
Yep. They're next on 55. I'm on 53. I think there's a couple of others in front of me.
Jimmy tipped Collingwood too, so he was clubhouse leader on Friday morning, and then
so he
fell away.
He bombed the rest of the weekend.
There was a few like that. Like Sam McClure's a weird tipper.
Yeah, he's hot and cold, isn't he?
He's all over the shop. He tips 6, but he did it in a way that's just completely unpredictable. He was tipping...
That's Sam, I think.
Yeah.
That's the way
he was tipping
rolls.
Collingwood and then tipping Essendon, and it was weird.
Oh, actually,
and St Kilda.
In the office tipping, which is done via a different app, I noticed that I had the Giants in the tips, so I was actually hoping the Giants would win.
Well, you always hope the Giants would win. I know you've got a soft spot for them. It was a tough round, and it was the tightest round since 1970. So, if you
that's a bit before
if you
my
got
time,
more
but
than 5 or 6, it wasn't before my time. I was
listening to the radio every game, chewing down your nails.
I would have been, I wouldn't have been able to walk.
But you still knew your footy.
Yeah,
you're still tipping winners back then.
No, well, it was still a disgrace that Collingwood lost from 44 points up at half time. Apparently. Anyway.
Okay, first game of the round, Gold Coast against Hawthorn in Darwin, Gold Coast Northern Fortress, where they're now, the 7th win in a row after beating the Bulldogs last week. So, and remember when the Hawks played there last year? Absolutely monstered.
Yeah.
And Sam Mitchell cracked it with him.
Was that in Darwin, though, or was that at Metricon? I reckon that was at Metricon. It was round 5, or People's First, or,
It was on the road anyway.
Gold Coast,
he was most disappointed with
I'm tipping the
Gold
Coast because of basically the venue. I mean, they've been up in Darwin. I know Hawthorn arrived on Monday, but Gold Coast have been up there for a week. It was a tough win over the Bulldogs. 5-day break for both of them. But just the fact that they don't have to travel, their midfield's pretty well settled, and Hawthorn's made quite a few changes.
Yeah, Jack Gunston and Jarman. Well, Jack Gunston's being rested. Jarman Impey's partner is expecting a baby very soon. Lloyd Meek's been rested. Probably helps not having it's a 6-hour flight. These are big guys.
Yeah.
In economy. I don't know what class they fly, but if they've got teammates that put their seat back and
they used to try to give the ruckman at least in front of
the exit row.
Yeah, something like that. Ned Reeves is going up though, so he won't have had to stand if his knees were up near his throat. Lloyd Meek's a big loss, and so is Jack Gunston, surprisingly, who's just
second on the Coleman, is he?
Yeah,
and he
absolutely
had a big difference last week in the last quarter. Yeah. He's playing career best footy at a time when we'd be thinking
he's not playing career best footy.
Well, he's on track. He's
playing much better than any of us expected. But Jack Gunston was an absolute star.
He was, but you look at his numbers. He's on track
to
kick as many goals as he did.
We don't look at our numbers. We watch what we see. And Jack Gunston is a great player in great form. I'll give you that.
Anyway, he's not playing this week, so he's going to be a big loss. The thing I liked about Gold Coast last week was, they smacked the Bulldogs in contest, which is both teams' strength, and also their ability to steady right at the end when their temperament was being tested, run down the clock, win a few key moments, and hold off the Dogs. It was a most un-Gold Coast-like performance in that was the sort of game years gone by they'd probably drop.
Yeah, it was a really good game. I reckon it was one of the best games that we've seen played up at Darwin. When there was a little bit drier than they normally get from people who were up there.
Yeah, it wasn't that slippery, was it?
No. But I agree with you. I thought, although there's a bit of luck involved in all that, it would be a great confidence booster for them beating the Bulldogs in such a tight game.
And one thing I'm interested to see how it plays out is, Gold Coast played the hot game last week. So, they're recovering from a game that would have been physically more taxing. Hawthorn had the extra. I mean, Hawthorn are playing in Melbourne, but then they've got to acclimatise to the conditions and have the flight. So I'm not sure where the advantage is, but Gold Coast play the ground well.
Would you say this is a 50-50 or Gold Coast easily?
Well, this is a 50-50 game for sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm tipping Gold Coast.
Yeah, I'm tipping Gold Coast as well, but I've got 11 points is my margin.
It was pretty hot in Melbourne too last Saturday.
It was warm.
Different
it was
heat.
mild.
Different heat.
Not 80% humidity, but...
No.
Anyway, I don't think Hawthorn players will be wearing long sleeves up in Darwin.
You wouldn't think so.
Next game, Friday night footy, Sydney against Carlton at the SCG. The Swans, can you believe it, in round 10 playing for their season. And the Blues, I think they could go into the 8 if they win this game. As hard as it might be to believe after the first 4 weeks of the year. Carlton's record at the SCG, I had a look at it last night. And I was surprised how bad it was. I mean, I knew it was bad, but since 1994, they've won 2 out of 19 games
really?
At the SCG.
Jeepers, that is almost change your tip type of information. Where were you? Where you been all morning?
Actually, been out at Casey.
Don't you pass? That sort of stuff. I think it's 10 years since that famous game which led to the disgraceful treatment of Adam Goods between Sydney and Carlton. Around Sir Doug Nicholls'
Yes,
round.
that was 2015 when he performed the war dance. I was actually in the crowd that night. I just thought, I'd go have a watch. I had the night off, and I thought I'd never watched a game of footy at the SCG from the ladies' stands. I thought I'd go, and then Adam Goods did the dance and all kicked off. Yeah,
no, terrible, shameful period really for most of us. I'm tipping Carlton to win because of their form, and I like the way they gutsed it out against St Kilda because they didn't really steamroll them. They had to play an ugly brand of football to beat them, and they had to beat them a couple of times because they kept coming. Sam Walsh was outstanding.
He's very good, wasn't he? He's got his run back. Charlie Curnow looked like he was going to take the game,
that goal was
win the
fantastic.
Game by himself. Yep,
love that.
And Harry Mackay's up and going as well. So Carlton look a different team than the one we saw in the first month. And I think their last 5 weeks, apart from the Adelaide game, has been pretty consistent. And their last month's been better than Sydney. Sydney's you just don't. I mean, the injuries clearly have hurt them, but they don't look like the same side.
They were asleep, weren't they, early against Essendon? It's disappointing because they probably should have won that game.
All the numbers pointed to them winning it, and their poor kicking for goal. I think they had an extra 17 inside 50s. They won the contested ball against Essendon, but what was it, 9-2 at half time?
Yeah, the venue makes this a 50-50 game, but I'm pretty rock solid on Carlton. I'm not so much confident they win, but I think they are the logical choice when you're assessing the two teams.
Yeah, I gave this one a lot of thought, and
clearly, if you know the record of Carlton at the SCG, that's more research than I'm doing in a year.
and generally, Carlton struggle on the road against the best teams. And, I mean, Sydney's not one of the best teams this year. But I did notice Callum Mills and Joel Amati might be back this week.
Callum Mills would be huge.
Yeah, both of them would be huge. But given their given their history with injuries, it'd be a bit of a risk, I think, from the Swans' point of view if they played.
Surely they're ready if they play.
Yeah, Callum Mills has hardly played in the last year. Amati's a whole heap of injuries. All
right,
I think Amati's a risk. But anyway,
so is it a reason to tip against them or tip for them if they're in?
I don't really know. You want to see how they perform. Want to see how they perform.
We're supposed to be giving insight here, and you've just told them that Mills and Amati might play, and you don't know whether that's good or bad.
I think at their best, they would be welcome additions. I'm not so sure when they're first up after a long break.
Oh my God!
So
I mean,
Carlton have injuries as well, and in the end, I mean, if you've got a forward line of Hamling and Francis, that doesn't inspire much confidence.
No, that's terrible, isn't it? No disrespect to them. Both, Hamlin's a premiership player.
They're both very good defenders.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not forwards.
I'm tipping Carlton with confidence.
Well, I'm tipping Carlton not with as much confidence as you, and also note that the Swans are 1 from 4 at the SCG this year. So
there you go.
It's hardly been a fortress. Next game, first game Saturday afternoon, Collingwood against Kawana. I hope I pronounced that correctly. That's the name Adelaide is being known by for the next 2 weeks of Sir Doug Nicholls' round.
Yeah, good.
This is going to be a great game of footy.
This will be a ripping game of football, and Darcy Moore's a huge loss, given the firepower that Adelaide have up front with your man, Riley Thorpe.
My man's Darcy. Fogarty.
Yeah, Fogarty and Tex Walker, and I'm not sure who's going to play them. Billy Frampton is one, Jeremy Howe the other, and then you've got Braden Maynard probably playing tall, or you've got Charlie Dean coming into the team.
Maynard could take Fogarty at a pinch, couldn't he?
He could. I mean, he does those sorts of jobs.
Similar size, similar robustness.
I weighed this up a bit, but then I thought Collingwood... Adelaide nearly beat Collingwood. Was it last year? When they got
last year
off?
when Isaac Rankin ran what we thought at the time was 15 metres, but then they ran the tape over and it was actually 22 metres, which makes you think how far. I mean, 15 metres isn't very far, and it often gets paid.
It's a good effort for the umpires to see that, given their inability to see a few other things this year. Oh, gosh.
Well, he was running. He wasn't lying on the ground.
No,
so.
That's right. Collingwood, I think,
are you confident?
Should win. No, I wouldn't be confident. I reckon this is a genuine 50-50 game. I see that most...
Oh, you're sitting on the fence, are you, Pete?
Yeah.
You're supposed to give some confidence to the tips,
No, I'm not confident, so I'm just being honest. The Crows have got a good capacity to beat Collingwood. They've got the capacity to beat Collingwood with their midfield and the confidence they get from the showdown. You know what actually influenced me in the end to tip Collingwood was that teams struggle to win after showdowns.
What's the record? Have you got a record?
I've got no idea what the record is.
It's just your theory.
Vibe. A vibe. No, but it's true. It is
it's
true.
A good vibe.
Yeah, no, I can't give you the exact figures, but I know it's accurate.
It's a strong vibe. Well, I'll give you some numbers that will make you more confident to tip Collingwood. Adelaide have lost the last 10 games against the Pies.
Yeah.
They've lost 9, drawn 1. Their last win was round 17 in 2016.
Wow.
When Jake Lever, Eddie Betts and Charlie Cameron were still playing for them.
Really?
That's a long time.
There's been two that they've been really ripped off, though, late in games against Collingwood at the MCG.
Yeah, well, last year,
Jordan Dawson
one where the AFL apologised as well.
Yeah.
So I'm so close to tipping Adelaide or Kawana in this game because I need to make up tips, and Darcy Moore is a massive out on top of De Goey and McStay, so that's either end of the ground.
De Goey and McStay. I mean, De Goey wasn't doing much. So.
No, but still he's a name.
I know.
And Lockie Schultz was playing really good footy last week before
absolutely.
He got injured.
No, he was in the top 3 or 4 players in the game. I don't think he will. He's listed as a test. But I'd be surprised
Pendlebury and Maynard come back in. I didn't actually think Collingwood were that impressive last week. I mean, it was a great win, but if they play like that again, they'll probably lose most games because they're not going to... How often are you going to have Jamie Elliott kicking 6 and Bobby Hill kicking 3 and winning with 34 inside 50s?
Not very often, Andrew. I think Kawana would prevail if that is the situation. If they have that bigger... I mean, Fremantle clearly didn't have a forward line, whereas the Adelaide Crows have an outstanding forward line. Yeah,
I'm tipping Collingwood, but I'm begrudgingly tipping them, only because I think they're a very good team. But I think the Crows this week, it'd be close. If you want to tip the Crows, by all means, go ahead.
I agree with that.
Because you might make one up.
We're online all the time. Just search Age Real Footy on Facebook or Twitter.
Next game, Saturday afternoon in Adelaide, Yatapulti, as in Port Adelaide, against Geelong. Power, they were good last week, weren't they?
Yatapulti were good. That was a tough effort, but they're so inconsistent and they need the best players playing. So Connor Rosie, best on ground. Butters is a great player.
Lose Kane Farrell.
Kane Farrell's a really
is important to them.
Important player. I think Geelong, even though Geelong weren't that impressive last week, they were terrible in the first half. Dropped marks and
the first 20 minutes, they looked rattled.
Well, they ran out. I know this is controversial. I shouldn't say this, but if you run out with flowers, handing out bouquets.
Come on, it was Mother's Day.
Mother's Day. And then you get the first 5 and the first 6 kicked against you.
Would you have had a different
view?
Would you have had a different view if they ran out with porterhouse steaks to give to them?
No, I just think it's a bit performative. You can give. Yeah, we all love our mums. I particularly love my mum, but I'm saying that do you really need to run out on the ground and give them a bunch of flowers?
The Carlton players went up.
I can see
and
Claire's
said hello
got
to
her
their
head in her
mothers.
hand. She just can't believe
Carlton
it.
players did it. Didn't affect them.
No, but I know. Anyway, I shouldn't have said it.
They should have ignored their mums. That's what you're saying.
No, they shouldn't have ignored their mums. They should have done it away from everyone. Like, just do it in the rooms. Do it somewhere else. Who cares?
This is extraordinary, buddy. Extraordinary stuff.
But I'm just voicing what I thought at the time.
Well, their mothers won't be there this week, so do you give the Power more of a chance?
No, I'll give Geelong more of a chance. That's why I'm tipping them. It's a Doug Nicholls round and not Mother's Day.
I think the Cats will win. They play Adelaide Oval well, and they smacked them in the qualifying final last year. That was an absolute drubbing. And I actually thought the Cats, they were very good in defeat, apart from that first 20 minutes after losing their focus with giving flowers to their mothers.
Well, they just got beaten around the midfield, and Chris Scott admitted Jeremy Cameron wasn't the greatest move. Sam DeConning's struggling. Jeez, his positioning was ordinary.
Jack Henry might be back this week.
That would be
back,
great.
Mr. Geelong?
He might not be back. They're hopeful. Tom Stewart should be back. Not sure about Reece Stanley. The other thing, Willie Rioli hopefully will be back for Port Adelaide.
Yes, and he'll get a good reception, a warm reception from his home crowd this week.
I would hope so.
Cats for me?
Yep. Cats for me.
And the margin depends on which Power team turn up.
Correct.
Next game, Saturday afternoon, the twilight game, Greater Western Sydney against Wollullup Fremantle at NG Stadium. No Jake Stringer this week, which is a shame because he was starting to build some form. He was electric in that first bit last week.
He was handy. He kicked 2 goals, didn't he?
He really capitalised on Geelong's lack of focus from the Mother's Day flowers.
The Mother's Day distraction, the bouquet blue.
Then he did his hammy and now he's going to be out for a month, so that's a shame for him.
Yep.
It's a blow for the Giants as well, because on top of Josh Kelly and Brent Daniels, they're important players for them. I think Bedford will be back this week.
Yeah, he should be with his eye feeling okay. I reckon the Giants win this easily. Fremantle have been so disappointing and continue to disappoint. The one thing I would say about them is they're a very young team.
They are. I'm glad you mentioned that. 14 players fewer than 100 games last week.
Yeah, okay. And I don't think that's taken into account as much as it should be when we're assessing them. I overrated their potential to make top 4, top 8 this year. I think they've still got another year of development.
Yeah, I
they're disappointing.
I hope Longmuir keeps his job.
So do I.
Because rebuilds are hard. When you get to the bottom, it takes a long time to become a good team.
That's true. I think some people would say that he does need to be a little more aggressive in his selection and a few other areas.
They've got a lot of injuries though, the Dockers.
Yeah. Anyway,
Darcy might be back or might play despite the concerns last week.
Yep.
So it'd be good to see him up. I saw a report Luke Jackson might want to go back to Melbourne.
What can you say about that? Who knows? We'll find out. Giants.
Yeah, Giants for me. Dockers horrible on the road. 1 out of 7 since they beat the Swans last year. So can't trust Freo on the road. Next game, Saturday night footy. The Western Bulldogs against Essendon at Marvel Stadium. This is a massive test for the Bombers.
Well, I think they've passed most of their tests. Actually, I think this is an opportunity for the Bombers. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The Bulldogs have been, along with probably Collingwood since opening round and Hawthorn, the most consistent, and Brisbane, the most consistent of teams. Even though they've lost a few games, they've obviously been depleted by injury, and they were really good against the Gold Coast in Darwin. They've been good pretty much every week.
Yeah,
they're better than Essendon.
They've been consistent, which is unlike the Dogs in the last few years.
Well, I remember this time last year, Luke Beveridge saying repeatedly, look, we just have not got consistency. That's what we want to build into this team. And he has done that without doubt. I think they'll win quite easily over Essendon.
Ooh, Lockworthy?
100% lock.
Wow. Commiserations to Bulldogs fans. It's going to be a big task for you to win after that statement. Yeah. Essendon have been,
Zach Reid's great.
Zach Reid's excellent. He's really kicked on as a player. They didn't get a whole heap out of Zach Merritt last week, but But, I mean, the Bombers, one thing I did notice in that last quarter, they had players behind the ball from about 16 minutes
Is that right?
very early in the quarter.
Yeah.
And I feel like Essendon are probably at that stage now where they don't quite know how to just finish games.
No, they were a bit lucky, weren't they?
They got a bit defensive too early.
Yeah, Nick Martin. I don't want to cast aspersion on Nick Martin because he probably fell legitimately, but it didn't look like it should have been a free kick. That's all.
And Hayden McLean missed right at the end, which would have made it a less than one goal game. So
they had their chances. Essendon deserved to win, no question about that.
No, I actually have a lot of faith in what they're doing at the moment. I think they're better placed now than they have been in Brad Scott's first 2 years. They're doing it with a younger team, and I feel like it's more sustainable. Bulldogs for me, though, this week.
Yep.
Next game, Richmond against North Melbourne, and the Kangaroos are in the unfamiliar position of being favourites.
Even though they've only won 1.5 games compared to the Tigers' 3.
Yeah, this is a huge game for North Melbourne because if they don't win, then I think their fans have good reason to be upset because they're finally against a side that is behind them in the rebuild.
Yep.
But where the Tigers, what the advantage they do have in their list over North Melbourne is that their senior players are premiership players, more accomplished than North senior players who haven't had much success. But where North have got the advantage is that they're young players who've got 3, 4, 5 years into them now, as opposed to Richmond's first year players.
North should win.
Yeah, you look at percentage this year. I mean, North, they're in the 70s. They haven't been, they had that month where they got hammered, but they've been in a lot of games.
Yeah, and they've tightened up their defence. I mean, I know they conceded probably less than 100 points against Adelaide or Port Adelaide, but it was they've just become a more reliable team. They got most phases of the game right last week. They just blew it at the end when they had an opportunity and probably should have been able to put themselves in front. Poor old Costanzi.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He missed the handball.
But Luke Parker, I think, has been really good for North Melbourne.
Yeah, he's been a great pickup. He's the best thing that's happened to North Melbourne, I think, in the last 5 years.
Really?
Luke Parker is a huge recruit for them.
I've loved the way he's gone about it, as they say. But North Melbourne, if they get on a roll and get on top of Richmond, they'll start to play with some flair, and I reckon they could win quite easily.
Yeah, I think this will be close because I think both teams really struggle to win.
Yep. And
I've got North by 2 points. The last win at the MCG is round 9, 2017. Lost 9 in a row at the MCG in North Melbourne.
Richmond are very good at the MCG.
Yeah, that's my worry. That's why I'm not too confident about it.
If you need to pick one up, tip Richmond.
Libby Birch might. Everyone's going to be jumping on her train this week.
Yeah,
following her example.
I thought you tipped Richmond for a second there.
Next game, Brisbane against Narm at the Gabba, the Melbourne Footy Club, as they're being known this week.
Yep.
Lions they are on the rebound, aren't they? Because nobody expected a draw. And they were beaten in the midfield last week, which has been a weapon of theirs over the last 5-6 years. Playing 2 rucks didn't work for them.
Yep.
So I don't think they'll do that again. The Demons, I watched them last week. They should have been further ahead at 3/4 time, and they paid the price in the last quarter.
Yeah, I didn't watch the Brisbane Lions game because I was at Geelong Giants, but I did watch Melbourne, and yes, Narm, you're absolutely correct. They should have been 4 or 5 goals up at halftime. They just could not convert, could they? They missed goals. And
they were struggling, and then the one that they should have got from the goal square where they could not have missed, the umpire didn't pick it up. So I felt Melbourne, they were flipping their cheese boards in the MCC this last week.
Yeah, I would have been too. It was kind of one of those ones that it was so bad it was good. Like, you just looked at it and thought, I can't believe that's just happened. You know how you get aggro about 50-50 decisions sometimes that you think you're right, but one like that, you just got to laugh.
Yeah, I don't get aggro unless I don't get angry at umpires.
You don't
generally,
get angry about anything.
If it's not my team, I sort of just laugh. I do laugh.
It was fun. Particularly when Sicily started juggling the ball around the goal.
Didn't he throw it as well around the goal post?
Oh, gosh. I love footy. It's funny, isn't it? I reckon Brisbane win.
Yep, Lions, I think, quite comfortably. And I'm going to make them my lock.
Oh, brave. Brave, wee.
Well, they got in the draw last week, so...
Yeah, true enough. No, they're coming off a poor form.
Anyway, I'm confident with that. Final game of the round. Bear with me, listeners. Woolwich Marawa against Euroic West Coast Eagles against St Kilda.
Well done there, Willie. I won't try to repeat that, but I think the Saints... Well, you can't tip West Coast, can you?
No, not with confidence.
Even though they've pushed Richmond to a point and Essendon to 2 points, so they're building.
They're trialling well, aren't they, in racing parlance? They're knocking on the door.
They're knocking on the door, and St Kilda's the sort of team they could knock over.
Well, they have to win a game at some point.
People say that.
This would be one of the games where I think Eagles fans anyway will reckon that they're in with a show.
Absolutely. And the Saints will need to play well to beat them.
They were okay last week.
They tried hard. They just haven't got the polish. They've got a lot of good emerging young players. They just haven't got a forward that can really make a difference. And they probably lack one key back, particularly against Harry and
no, well, they lose Dougal Howard this week. He must have been injured right at the end because he could not move.
No, he couldn't. Dougal's got a funny running style anyway. He's got one of those walk runs. But I'm becoming a master.
Sorry, Steve Monaghetti.
As I get older. No, look, we're assessing. We're not comparing. St Kilda...
You got any tips for Gat while you're at it?
St Kilda win, and you can shut up.
I'm doing the Saints, but there's not much confidence with this tip either. So we haven't really filled you with much confidence this week, but it's sort of round.
It's a tough round where the answers are obvious, but the fears are real.
Very philosophical.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, I watch this with a greater passion than most, I must admit.
Well, tipping's just added that extra edge, isn't it?
It's definitely
to games you're not emotionally invested in otherwise.
Correct.
Well, that's all we've got time for. I think this is the last 9 game round for a little bit, or we've got one more. No, there's another nine game round. But anyway, that's all for us.
What are you, a 9-round specialist or something? You're worried that your form's going to drop off. Sorry.
I have no form to drop. Okay, you can see the rest of the experts' tips at theage.com.au/AFL. Make sure to subscribe, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email to realfootypod@theage.com.au. You might even have some running tips for Pete. We'd love to hear from you. The podcast will return on Monday. Thanks for listening, and may your team win.